All right, welcome to Halitics. I'm Hal Ginsberg, and I'm so pleased to be joined by two great concerned citizens, environmental leaders. I'm going to call them heroes, even if they're embarrassed by that. Maury Johnson and Elaine Tanner. Maury is well known to my viewers, of course, with Power Protect Our Water Heritage Rights. Elaine Tanner is founding director of Friends for Environmental Justice. And let me just greet both of you. Thank you for joining. Then I've got a couple of great videos I want to play, and then we'll talk about the fight against the Mountain Valley Pipeline. Let's start with you, Elaine Tanner. Tell us about Friends for Environmental Justice.
Yeah, I'm located here in Eastern Kentucky in an area of Letcher County, which is out in a mining community. And my journey started challenging regulations that were not being fulfilled as they were designed to do. And when I saw the things that were going on, I wanted to have a stand that was going to be taken seriously. And the Friends for Environmental Justice was formed out of that need. And we work in several states. It's a regional thing at this point, and I like to say the Ohio River Valley, and dealing with mining pipelines, fracking wells, injection wells, and we're seeing a lot of problems in West Virginia now with the intersection of mining, oil, and gas, and they are starting to take these old wells and starting to reuse them again, and it's just coming out everywhere. So those are the reasons that we are for environmental justice.
And you're in Eastern Kentucky, not too far from Ohio. Is that correct?
Actually, I'm probably closer to West Virginia and Virginia. I'm in the almost down to the border of Kentucky where Tennessee intersects.
Beautiful country, is it not? Except for where you see the scars from the mining.
Yeah, we have a lot of scars, and what I've seen mainly here is, again, those regulations have not been followed, and we have a state here in Kentucky who sanctions the work that they've done knowingly that these are wrong, and that's been a serious problem for me. I've been fighting for the property to be reclaimed properly since basically 2002.
So, Maury, you're with us. You have an open invitation. I've got you on the line by phone. Maury, you called me yesterday to tell me you wanted to come on and talk to my audience. I hope we have a lot of folks on to hear you. Tell us why this was an important day for you to be on Halitics.
Well, the last time we were talking, Hal, we were trying to oppose this dirty deal that Joe Manchin had attached to the debt ceiling limits, the fiscal responsibility, that basically took away citizens' rights and the rule of law. That this pipeline would be finished, and that the illegal permits that have been struck down by the court would be sanctioned by the government and would be reissued, and we couldn't challenge them. So we've been dealing with that all summer. So Mountain Valley Pipeline has got a green light to do construction, and actually in this bill, got a variance to do anything that they wanted to do. This is kind of what countries that have oligarchies and dictatorships do. This is not what people in America should expect. And one of these, I asked Elaine to come on. They're using that model actually to build other things like a prison down there in her neighborhood. We'll talk about that in a little while. But this MVP pipe, has been sitting out on the road, baking in the sun, long after manufacturers have said it's safe to put in the ground. And I've been working on that issue about 3-4 years now. And we actually got PHMSA finally to issue a safety order, but the safety order has no teeth. And they issued a safety letter in August. I was up here in D.C. I was up in the D.C. area in July. We held a press conference in front of the PHMSA Department of Transportation offices. And then we got a meeting with some folks, and then they drafted this letter, but it has no teeth. It has no, it's just a bunch of fancy language. So the pipeline people have started constructing. They finally last week came up with a consent agreement, which doesn't really do anything, but they still have 30 days to continue to bury pipe before they have to start enforcing what the consent agreement says. So Mountain Valley Pipeline has been working, as somebody, as I said yesterday, like your hair's on fire, to get as much of this pipe, this unsafe pipe, in the ground, knowing that our agencies probably won't do anything about it. So I was back up in D.C. this week, and we had a press conference in front of PHMSA. There's a YouTube video of that press conference, which we'll share with your audience.
Yeah, and actually, just let me just say, there are a lot of links in the YouTube notes for this program. So folks who are watching on YouTube, the link to that press conference, or that press media conference outside FERC is there as well.
At the same time, we were having the press conference in front of the Department of Transportation office. A group of my friends, activists, and I didn't know they were doing this. I knew they were going to do something. They were up at Baltimore, disrupting Pete Buttigieg, and they asked him why he was not doing more to fight the climate change and put a curtailment on all these horrible projects. Joe Manchin is leading the administration around by their nose. They do what he wants to do, and it's a shame, because we had such great hopes for this administration to do something about climate change and the pipelines. But people in America need to know that the Mountain Valley Pipeline is just a symbol of what can happen to everybody in America, that the legislatures, like our government, some of the people in our government are deciding that the policies that we've developed over 50 years to protect the environment are in the way of horrible projects, whether it's a pipeline or a prison or an LNG plant. And they're now they're attaching these as an attachment to a bill that has to pass, that says citizens have no right to complain, and you may not want it, but you're going to get it anyway.
Yeah. And I mean, and the irony too is, folks said you have to vote for Biden, you have to vote for the Democrats because of the climate crisis. And we're seeing that, at least in terms of production and consumption, we're at record levels right now of fossil fuels. So regardless of what legislation the Democrats may pass, it isn't changing the trajectory. Are you seeing any positive impacts in Eastern Kentucky, Elaine Tanner, from the change in administrations from Trump to Biden?
Yeah, I have. I've seen some environmental protections being put back on, but I've also seen a lot of lies and deception coming out of Washington to pacify us on some of the issues that we face.
Now, Maury's been mentioned a couple times a prison in your region that seems to be opposed by the locals, but the federal government is bound and determined to push this through. Is that right?
Yes. A little backstory on my community. 50 years ago, we had broad form deeds, and a group formed called Kentuckians for the Commonwealth to challenge that. And then we had the Apple Shop, which we will talk a little bit about, that was doing films and teaching the youth to do films and to tell our stories here in Eastern Kentucky. So we have a hub here, and that's one of the reasons that I wanted to relocate here, because there are like minds here in this area. And 8 years ago, they proposed a prison. There was a federal bill issued, and there was $500 million sent to build this federal prison. And one of the reasons that it was shut down is because the people cared. The last thing we need is another prison. And this particular prison, they want to put up on a mountaintop removal site. And when the floods came last year in July to this region, we ended up seeing this site that they are proposing was shut off from everything. And so an environmental impact study is very, very important. And we have Hal Rogers here in Kentucky, who slipped in a bill just recently that would take our right to speak on these issues, on the environmental impact studies. And we were basically left without a voice because of what he's done. That's just another dirty deal that we have to deal with.
So why do you think, Maury and Elaine, and I'll start with you, Maury, is Hal Rogers your Congress member? Is that right, Elaine, or state? Yeah. So why, despite all the harm that corporatist and conservative policies have done to your region, do the folks still vote for people like Hal Rogers and Joe Manchin? And I'll go to you first, Maury.
I have no idea. I voted for Joe last time because I thought that he was probably far better than the alternative. And now I don't think there's any option. So you have to look at the big picture. I thought, well, maybe we can fight off his fossil fuel agenda, and we did successfully for a long time last year, until the pipeline people in oil and gas bought a few more members of Congress, I think, and then maybe we would, get some better court people. Voting is tough. Some people are single issue voters. I'm not a single issue voter. I look at a lot of different things, and sometimes I vote for people I know that's bad in one thing, but maybe better on another. But it's beyond me why we can't. Well, I know why we can't get better people to run. I mean, there have been people been after me for months and months and months to run against Joe Manchin or run for this office or run for that office, and I think, why would I put myself up to that when these corporations are going to put millions and millions and millions and millions of dollars up against me, and I can't raise that kind of money. I've been promised a lot of money, but nothing, and then they tell lies about you. And it takes you months, if you could ever, just debunk this stuff. So I think my time's better spent doing what I'm doing.
So, Elaine, is it what kind of Maury's saying, which is your choices, or it's a Hobson's choice? You're caught between the devil and the deep blue sea over and over again in elections. You don't really have an ally running for many of these offices.
That's exactly what we see. And then when you have someone like Hal Rogers in there for 30 plus years, and he will die in there. And then we have Mitch McConnell, who's been in there basically the same amount of time. You can't go up, like Maury's saying, you cannot go up against these people. It's very, very hard to win in those circumstances. And then being in a red state, it's all about the jobs, and forever has been about the coal. So for me to come into a coal community and hang these corporations up to dry, which is what I have been doing since 2008. I have a case in the Kentucky Supreme Court challenging these wrongs that these people have done to us. And years ago, when I first started doing this, I was in records in Frankfurt looking for what I could find on the mining permits that affected the property here. And I found a letter from I knew he was an elderly person just in my heart. And he was trying to respond to a notice that showed up in the paper. And he was sent this list of forms and things that he needed to do to challenge this in their permit conferences. And then nothing ever happened. These people were so intimidated. So I have taken it upon myself to be that voice for that man and for others that can speak. And we're in an area where people have been pushed down so far and so long that they just accept this as normal, and it's not normal. This is not something that we will survive if we don't everybody get on board and join us to fight these issues that we're dealing with today.
All right. Well, we do have, again, some links in the description, the YouTube description of the video here. So hopefully that will at least direct some folks to your two great organizations, Friends for Environmental Justice and Protect Our Water Heritage Rights. You mentioned the Apple shop. I was confused when Maury first brought that to my attention. I was thinking, is this where you buy a computer? But no, here's a video. I'm not going to play all of it. It's beautiful. There is a link to it. in the description. I want to play the first minute or so. This does address specifically the Mountain Valley Pipeline. So let's get it on the let's play it for folks.
You know, the pipeline people claim that once it's underground, you won't even worry about it, but you've got a ticking time bomb. Probably once a week I have a bad dream about the pipeline coming through and just destroying what, as you'll see later, is some very, very beautiful land.
It's terrifying. It's absolutely terrifying. I have to move from my house. I will not live with this pipeline in my backyard. And this is land that's been in the family since the 1800s, early 1800s. When you know how bad it is and what the possibilities are, you don't want to live in any of these things. That's why we fight so hard.
I was born in these hills. I'm not very educated. I did graduate high school, but I've always been in touch with the hunting and fishing side of living in the mountains. I've floated down the rivers and the creeks and the streams. I've hunted bait most of my life. But no, I've never, and I still don't consider myself as an activist. I'm somebody who cares about something more than myself. I care about the butterflies and the bees and the trees and the leaves, and I know, like I said, we're tied into this.
People who live here know the land. They know how prone it is to landslides. They know that the karst terrain means that disruption in one place can cause disruption in the water and the land for miles away. We know how steep the slopes are. And so since the pipeline was first announced, everyone has said, this is a bad idea. And lo and behold, we've been proven right every step of the way.
All right. So yeah, Protect What You Love is that video, and there's a lot more to it, but I just wanted to get that out there. Very powerful stuff. Elaine, are you one of the producers in that group, or did you want to say something more? I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, that was a great young lady from over at Blacksburg, I believe, that did that video. And she won some pretty major awards for it.
Does it, we work so hard. I mean, I shouldn't say we. I don't want to say we. You work so hard. You put and I know it's your life more. I mean, you've made it very clear. This is your family's land. This is generational. And you as well, Elaine. I mean, it must just, I don't want to make you sad, but even hearing Jammy, like, I think I saw a tear in your eye, Elaine. I was starting to tear up when I heard him speak. How do we protect people? I mean, have we lost our soul as a nation? I don't even know where to go. I don't know what to say when we just destroy lives just so feelingly.
We just need to show up when things are happening in your community. Like for the prison, for example, to back up on that, we are back at this fight. We won the fight 8 years ago, and now they want to send this prison back to us. So we've organized, and we have hold meetings, and we go show up places and table and let people know what is exactly going on. The biggest resistance that we see is the jobs, and that makes it hard to understand. I feel like with the Apple Shop telling these stories, these are awesome stories, and they try to work with the youth to tell those stories, and it's an Appalachian thing, and we have many coalitions and organizations together that get the word out. So we just got to keep trying, and people have to show up. When we share things out on social media, get it to your communities. I came from Ohio, in a community where I was facing, my first pipeline was a little 8-inch Sunoco pipeline, a mile up the road from my house. And I was at the time in a position, I was the director or president of our local county planning. And it gave me a position to stand on. So when I'm calling this company to find out what was going on, after a 10-minute conversation, they realized that the question was, am I a concerned citizen, or am I calling in a professional capacity? And I said, I'm a professional concerned citizen. That was how I felt in coming across that. But that was one little pipeline. And then I had Rover coming through with two 42-inch pipelines, which was an Energy Transfer Partners project. 500 million gallons of slurry were spilled when they tried to go under the Tuscarawas River. They tore across people's lands, and the sad stories, I've reported on these for many, many years, of having to be 30 foot from a pipeline where your kids sleep. These things can't be. Then I had the Nexus coming through, and then I had Utopia East. And I think the push was when they wanted to to supply these pipelines, they wanted to put 50,000, and this was Cabot Oil, TransCanada, now TC Energy, wanted to put 50,000 fracking wells in my community. And we were already overloaded by having frack waste brine into the slow flow injection wells that was coming out into our water. And I think that that's what really put me on, I didn't want to deal with pipelines. I had all this mining stuff going on down here in Eastern Kentucky, but I lived in Ohio and I had no choice. People talk about what can we do. I was appointed to a position of county planning, and it's kind of a funny story. My friend was running for office, and she was of an opposite party, and to vote for her, and I cared about her and I wanted her in there because she was a good ally. So I had to change parties, and then they thought I was, and then they appointed me to this position and found out I wasn't. So when my term was over of 6 years with the being president of county planning, when that was over and I came to fight the pipelines, and I was there fighting against these fracking wells, they knew who they were dealing with. And because I had stood my ground as a county planning president, they had to go by the rules, and we forced them to do that. What we were able to do in this situation was get our own baseline testing going on, and they were trying to drill through old gas storage areas, which is another problem in that community. And their leases did not cover that. Their leases were only for storage. So we shut them down and they left town. And we see a little activity there now, but not a lot. But those are the times that you get involved, and ever how you got to do it. Just get out there.
Well, you mentioned, go ahead, Maury, and then I have a question for Elaine, and then we'll get to your the next video here.
Hey, you ask Elaine a question and I'll come back. Well, it's fresh on your mind.
So I was just curious because you mentioned how important jobs are in these communities, and we've seen both parties often deprioritize good jobs, especially in the heartland, if you will, and often send jobs overseas. What's the poverty rate like? Like, what's the longevity in Appalachia? And are there very high rates of cancer from all the mining and the pipelines, the fracking?
Yes, there are. In Ohio, we do health studies and participated getting the community and doing health fairs and mainly educating the people. What I see here in Appalachia is sad because my community, and I say my little community of 97 families, were on Mill Creek. And what had happened is when we came down and went to hook our well up, we were going to move down here 20 some years ago, and we went to hook our well up, and all we could do was flush our toilets without water. And I got the Department of Water involved, and I got the Department of Mining involved, and they kind of butted heads against each other. The water was so toxic, we could not touch it. And you've got these children in our community that can't take showers, that their mom couldn't even let them brush their teeth with the water that they had. And that meant just a whole change of life. Women 35 years old and still today with gallbladder attacks. And that doesn't happen to people. They say diet. No, it's the water. It's about the water here. And kind of tagging in on the job situation, we have mountaintop removal here. We thought we solved the problem. Well, when Trump was in office, it came back at us again. And mountaintop removal takes away from jobs. So you might have 50 people underground mining this coal, and then you go up to the top of the mountain. And we stood here helpless because Consol Coal had claimed ownership to the land that I sit on. And my partner it's been in his family for 6 generations. And an inspector stood on the mountain and said, My permit shows that Consol Coal owns this property. We were helpless. And in 2008, that's when we filed a case. I handled the case all the way up to the Supreme Court, and now we had to bring in an attorney to handle this. These things can't happen anymore. We got to hold these people in power responsible. And it goes all the way up to the top. And that is President Biden. And you know, we've been to Washington so many times. I can't count how many times I've gone to Washington and stood on my soapbox to try to get some people to come in here and listen to what was going on. Illegal things going on. And it's continuing. It's not like it's going to stop, but you know, that 2 jobs on a mountaintop removal site isn't going to solve the problems of jobs. A prison is not going to solve the problems of jobs. We need that $500 million to go back to Washington and be sent back to us to put the people that are still displaced from the flood that happened last year. Last year, I did a modern mining webinar. From that, I was asked to speak to the House of Representatives, the Natural Resources Department. This was in June. I told them what was going to happen with the flooding, and don't you know, July 28th, we saw it. And we are still suffering, and we will never come out of this, because the next time the rains come, the path is cleared, and it will come down faster. And these mines will fill up, and there will be more mines and more water. I'm fortunate to live in the head of a holler up on a mountain, but the people in my community were not so lucky. We lost 44 lives.
That's just terrible. It's tragic. Go ahead, Maury. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
We actually, knowing Elaine and having worked together with her on the walk for the future of Appalachia and other things, there was a little collaboration called Holler to Holler, and it was actually kind of taken over by the Virginia Tech Appalachian Studies people and some of us, and we tried to help the people down there in eastern Kentucky as best we could, and raised some money and took some supplies out of West Virginia down there. We're sure that if we have a problem, that they'd be the first to come to our aid. We take care of ourselves. We know the government's not really going to. There's too much red tape. That there's too much. You know, we got to make sure when the government does something, they want to make sure they know who's going to make the money. Usually, it's a corporation that makes the money in flood relief. We were talking about before. Elaine was talking about working together. I'm part of the Power Coalition, which is a coalition of counties that was formed to fight the Mountain Valley Pipeline. Now we have branched out. We work with groups all over the country on not just the Mountain Valley Pipeline, but a lot of other environmental and social injustice issues. We work with the 7 Directions of Service out of North Carolina. I work with BXE, the Beyond Extreme Energy Group, that's been working toward renewable energy. I have friends with Climate Defiance that are the youth-led organization that are putting the heat on and holding people accountable. There's a really great group up for older people, and they work with youth too, up in the Maryland, D.C., Virginia, Northern Virginia area, and all of Virginia, called Third Eye. Bill McKibben got this started with some people, and so if you're an older person and you say, well, I can't do certain things, you can certainly sit in front of a rocking chair in front of a bank and challenge the bank's practices of funding environmental disasters. There's lots of groups that meets everybody's little need. We realize we all have to work together. One group, one individual is like a drop in the bucket, and we need more drops. We need more people. People say, well, what can I do? Well, you can do something. It may not be what I'm doing. It may not be what Elaine's doing. You have a podcast. You help get the word out. People can come on your podcast, and we get it out to the world. And we thank you for what you're doing, Hal. It's important.
All right, let me get to this video. Here's a second video. This is you, Maury, and this I don't even remember where I found this, but it's very, very important and powerful as well. Also on the pipeline.
Okay, I've thought about this a lot. And we may or may not need any more pipelines. There are some sane places to put pipelines, and there's some insane places to put pipelines.
And Mountain Valley Pipeline is trying to put their pipeline in some really insane places. When we was first approached about a pipeline, I wasn't sure if it was a good idea or not a good idea, and I walked with the surveyors. I let them survey, and I figured out pretty quickly that not the contractors, but the people in charge were lying to us. And through further research, I really realized this was a terrible project, and very quickly then became very vocally against the pipeline and have traveled anywhere and everywhere I could and can to get the word out that these are not the pipelines that were built 60 years ago. These are monsters.
Yeah, very powerful stuff there, Maury. And was that also Apple that put that together?
I'll tell you who put that together. A group called the Pipeline Property Rights Center and part of the Niskanen Center out of Washington, D.C. They commissioned a great filmmaker out of Southwest Virginia named Sarah Hazelgrove, and she did 5 of these short films. There was the one that you just heard. There was another one called the MVP 300, a very powerful film that highlighted the fight of the Mountain Valley Pipeline, mostly in Virginia. I think you'll see me walking around in it a few times. There's another one based on the Constitution Pipeline in New York that was canceled. The Algonquin Pipeline up in New York. That's 4. There was 5 of them. There was 5 of these films, and so you can find those on YouTube in the Pipeline Property Rights Center.
I'm glad you reminded me, or you jogged my memory there, Maury. Thanks, because I did link to that specific channel as well. So it's all there for folks who are watching this. Please do click. Please check out these very important organizations. I mean, as important. I mean, this is their lives, right? This is Elaine and Maury's life, but to be honest, it's all of our lives. I mean, we're absolutely burning our planet up. We're destroying our environment. We're killing our mother. I mean, I don't know how much more dramatically I can put it, and I've been putting it this way for years. We have got to stop this, and there's no need for it. It's only just kicking the can down the road to where we're going to, not only, have the seas flood everything, but at some point we're going to have to stop burning coal and fossil fuels in any event. Elaine, I was curious. I asked you this before, and let me just get this picture. I got a picture here of Maury, which we'll get to in just a sec, a little more explanation. But I asked you off the air, you're not in West Virginia. You're not in Virginia where that pipeline's going to go. This isn't exactly your fight, and yet you're a part of it. So tell us about why you felt it was important to join with Maury and link arms with him and others.
Well, to start with, my family is from West Virginia, my mother. My father was from Kentucky. And this was taking place in my homeland. This was taking place in lands that my ancestors, died for over the years. I have a native background. I have, coal people in my family, and they were so abused over the years that I just see that as something that must be addressed. Friends for Environmental Justice work is community outreach, where basically I take care of what needs taken care of. People reach out to me and through our organization, and they say, this is going on in my community, can you come help? Right now I am in Wyoming County, West Virginia. I am in Kanawha County, West Virginia, and headed to Mercer and McDowell County to address some old pipeline issues. And I say old pipelines, they're basically supply lines that have been reintroduced into the matrix, so to say, and they are old, they're leaking and damaged, and it's causing gases to come up in our creeks and just all these issues. But that's my West Virginia. My father was from Menifee County here in Kentucky. I'm located here in southeastern Kentucky because of my partner, and because I tried to walk away. I tried to find a safe place in this world to live, and I thought this mountain was going to be it, but it's not. And I just keep uncovering things every day, and people keep reaching out, and I can't stop. I can't stop. I came here to retire. I can't stop when there's a need.
Maury, you wanted to tell us what you're holding up in that image there. Oh, you can't see that. I think Elaine can, but you can't. But you're holding a book up. It says Mountain Valley Pipeline Equipment, Sitting or Driving on the Pipe. And this is something you displayed yesterday at the conference.
That's actually, so the pipeline people started constructing again. I was actually in New York City for the United Nations Climate Week, participating in the march and a bunch of panel discussions. And while I was gone, the pipeline people showed back up to the farm. And not only is this old degraded pipe issue, the way they handle and treat the pipe is one. You're not supposed to be driving. I'm told I can't drive heavy equipment over the pipe. I can't park on top of the pipe once it's on the farm. I can't do a lot of different things. And so I'm documenting them driving up and down the pipe with a very huge dozer. I see them actually documented what I think is violations of the way they put the pipe in the ground in 2019. So I've been documenting all this. And I said, if they're doing that here on my farm where they know that they're being documented, what are they doing elsewhere? So we had these pictures that I take and put on a big placard of Appalachian Voices. Helped me get that done. I picked them up in Richmond and took them to D.C. yesterday. So they're actually in my van. It just shows you how irresponsible these people will treat. They're in a mad dash to get this thing finished, and I don't think they really care what happens with it. It's called the price of doing business. How much destruction will happen when the thing explodes somewhere, and they will all explode and leak and stuff. There's never been one made that's perfectly safe. But that's what that was. That's me holding up a poster that has the pictures I took a couple of weeks ago on the farm.
Let me get one more. So yeah, then there's just sort of a little bit of more of a close up, but you're also showing, I guess, some degradation of the pipes and how they're enormous. We saw that with the monster picture. These are really it's almost like images of Armageddon when you think of cities, and you mentioned the Gulf Coast and what those refineries have done to the folks there. Or Nigeria, Lagos, Nigeria. I mean, I don't know what. Again, words start to fail me, Maury and Elaine.
Well, let me tell you something. I was just going to say, you asked Elaine why she was involved in the pipeline fight in our neighborhood. I'll tell you why it is. So once you figure out how bad I got enlightened in 2014, 2015, how socially and environmentally destroying these are to the fabric of communities and the environment. Once you figure this out, it don't take long. It's not rocket science. And I have met people all over this country and actually the world. At the climate conference, I actually met people from Taiwan. I've been invited to Taiwan, Australia, Dubai, a lot of places to come and speak. When you find out that what's going on, I'm in solidarity with people in the Gulf Coast and in Chaco Canyon, Albuquerque, New Mexico, northern New York fighting pipelines, because we all have one place to live. It's not called West Virginia. It's not called Virginia. It's called Earth. And if we destroy the Earth, we have no place to live. And we are rapidly, you said kicking the can down the road? No, we're kicking the can over the cliff. We done went down the road. We're at the edge of the cliff. And we're getting ready to kick it over the cliff. And we need to stop. We need to stop what we're doing and change directions immediately.
All right. Yeah, thank you, Maury, so much for that. Elaine, do you have final words for us? And if you've got maybe something a little bit positive that we can wrap our arms around, I'll just throw some negative stuff out at you before I let you take over. You talked about $500 million. I think this is one of the reasons, how much good that could do for your community. And also to try to end this dependence on the poisons that may bring life in the form of dollars, but also bring death in the form of cancer and climate devastation and destroying the land that gives food and life. The endless wars that we're fighting, I think this is a good reason why so many folks in middle America are against them because they see billions of dollars going over to Ukraine, and now talk of more billions going to the Middle East, when we need that money right here to help poor, struggling, and working Americans.
Here's the positive. Here's the positive I see.
All right, go ahead, Maury. We'll let Elaine finish off. But go ahead. No, please.
Join these fights with these environmental and social justice groups. You're going to find some of the best people you've ever met in the world. It's a community of loving concern. It's hard work, but we have ways to have fun, and we know that we must win or we all lose. So that's the positive. Great people in this fight, and you'll not find any better people in the world.
For what I see, positive is the federal government does recognize that we are in trouble. And I think that flood was the kickoff to what we see. There are millions and millions of dollars coming into Appalachia, into these flooded communities. And the rebuilding part is what we need to see now. But I fear, I uncovered $2 million worth of misappropriated funds when I first started looking into this. And it was federal funds sent to my county. A county judge says it wasn't his responsibility to keep track of it. They were to put water lines in my neighborhood, and instead it ran across the county to the local county judge's neighborhood. And I think we need to be responsible in tracking these funds. There's abandoned mine lands is in place, and I just heard one of our mining inspectors went there, and he's one of the good guys. And I'm looking forward to see someone in power or in the situation that's going to be able to help us make sure these funds do what they need to do, and not go to build more prisons or businesses that we don't need. Tourism is great here, but when you're dealing with poison water and the things that we deal with, who wants to come here? I'm not so sure that's the best thing, but we are on the mend. We have programs here, and I'm looking at putting solar on my house, on our sawmill, and also on a high tunnel growing system. Farming, agricultural, the money's coming in here for that. We need to be self-sufficient, and we also need to prepare for the next blow.
I want to thank you both so much. What an honor for me to speak to two people doing so much to make things a little better, a lot better, they hope, in their corner of the world, and for all of us. This is Halitics. Please click subscribe, bottom right corner of your screen. Please click like. We will, I promise we'll have both Elaine and Maury back anytime they like. My next